Hey everyone. In today's video, we're going to talk about the queen and how the queen moves. As you can see from the diagram on your screen, the queen can make a lot of moves in the game and basically dominate the entire board. Everything that you see with green arrows are all squares, diagonals, files, and ranks that the queen actually can see. These are all things within her scope, within her vision. In addition to that, any squares that are touching her or that are immediately around her, she also can control. So the queen has a tremendous amount of power once she reaches some central aspect of the chessboard. And for that reason, we consider the queen the most powerful piece on the board. No question about it. For this reason, a lot of beginners, when they start a chess game or early in the game, they often will bring their queen out very early because they want this powerful piece to get out into the battle and give their opponent a hard time. The problem with that, though, is that once you do that, if you have a player who is not quite as savvy as you are about how to use their queen, you actually give them a plan, and their plan is very simple: attack your queen because she is a very powerful piece. So, for that reason, do not bring your queen out too early, even though now you know that she is a very powerful piece. If you reserve her power for a little bit later on in the game, she can be formidable. She can also be the thing that actually delivers checkmate to your opponent. So let's talk about what has to happen in the game in order for the queen to reach her full potential. Let's go to the starting position. First thing we should note is that from the very start of the game, the queen is pretty much limited in terms of what she can do. She doesn't have any vision at this point. She doesn't have any scope, is the word that we've been using. So from the start of the game, something needs to happen. This pawn or this pawn needs to move one or two squares forward in order to allow the queen to get out. So let's see what that looks like without making moves as if this was a game. If this pawn were moved, you can see that the queen suddenly has more scope. You can see if this pawn was moved, you can see the queen can now advance forward. So whether you start with this pawn, the D2 pawn, or whether you start with the E2 pawn, it really doesn't matter. It all depends on your style of play. But at some point, we're going to have to move one of these pawns in order for the queen to actually jump into the game and reach her full potential. Now, as far as the queen in terms of its ability to move, the queen actually has some very unique features and unique capabilities. So let me clear the board for a second, and let's add our queen to the board, and let's add a rook to the board. Well, the queen can move exactly like a rook can move. So you know that rooks can move along these ranks, and the rook can move along files, right? So rooks are file-based and rank-based movers, right? Well, guess what? The queen can also move along ranks and files. So remember, we talked about ranks are these horizontal rows. When you line your army up, they are lined up by rank. The highest ranking pieces are along the back row for both white and black. And then the lower ranked pieces are in the front. And then as they march into battle, they march up the files, right, to get into whatever's going to happen next. Well, the queen can march up the file. She can go across. So she's kind of like a general in the middle of the game. Also, the queen can move like a bishop. If we have a dark square bishop and the dark square bishop decides to move all the way up, well, the queen can move just like the bishop. If the bishop decides to move here, the queen can decide to join the bishop and launch an attack on, say, this vulnerable square. Let's say that was the case. But guess what? There's more. The queen can also move like a light square bishop. That's right. So if the light square bishop decides to go here, the queen can decide to join it, right? and they can gang up on pieces, right? So the bishop and the queen are formidable pieces when paired together. So, but guess what? There's more, and we'll cover these in later videos. But the queen can also move like the king. We haven't gotten to the king yet, but the queen can also move like a pawn. So the thing about the queen is that the queen can move like all of the pieces on the board. You know, the rooks, the knight, not the knight, but the rooks and both bishops, and can move like pawns. So that gives the queen a tremendous amount of power. Everything that you see on the board here in terms of all of these pieces, the queen can mimic them and more, because the queen can change sides of the board. She can change light squares, dark square, and work like a bishop of this opposite color. And she can be a very tall pawn if she decides that she wants to move more like a pawn. So how does the queen capture? Well, anything within the queen's path, the queen can capture. So if this rook is within the queen's vision or within the queen's scope, the queen can capture it. If there was I don't know, there was another queen, say here, and it was white's turn to move, the queen can capture it. If there was a bishop over here on a dark square, the queen can capture it, as long as it's within her scope. And again, for those of you who might get confused with the term scope, what I mean by scope is, let's say there's a queen here, and this is technically within the white's queen's scope. If there was a pawn here, well, guess what? The queen cannot capture the queen. The queen can capture the pawn, but then this queen would capture it back. Okay, so that's all I want to say about the queen. The queen is a very, very powerful piece, but it needs something to happen in the very beginning of the game in order for her to reach her full potential. These pawns have to move one square or two squares in order for her to get out. Once the queen is out, she has the ability to move around the board like a bishop. She can move horizontally like a rook. She can move like a light square bishop or a dark square bishop. All right. So that's it, folks. That is our queen. I hope you enjoyed this video. If I left anything out, leave a comment down below. Also, let me know if there's anything you want me to cover in future videos. And as always, like and subscribe, help the channel grow, and we'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.